everyone, I'm Sarah from Sourdough for Beginners. This is an intro video that I'm actually recording after 8 days of feeding a starter. So what I did was I created a brand new starter from scratch. I did it using all-purpose bleached flour and beer, but the process is essentially the same, whatever flour you use, and if you want to replace the beer with water, of course. So you could use this tutorial to actually build a starter from scratch. The other thing that I did was I actually put the starter on a scale, but measured in cups. So if you don't have a scale and you want to make your starter with cups, or if you want to understand what the difference between cups and weight measurements are, that gets covered extensively in this tutorial as well. In the tutorial every day, I've opened the starter, I've shown what happened overnight, I've taken photos, those will be edited and stuck into the video as well. So if you watch this whole video, you'll be able to see day by day, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, even maybe all the way to the 9th day, what happened with the starter and how we got to a point where it was awake and live and I was confident I could bake with it. And then we also talk about what you can do once your starter is developed. So make sure you check the description of this video. I will post the beginner bread recipe. I will post the beer bread recipe. And I will also post a link to our Essential Processes ebook that is going to help you get sorted out in your mind exactly what it is that you're going to do once your starter is active. We also have a fairly extensive common starter questions tutorial that I'll link. So good learning there for you while you're going through. As you're watching this video, feel free to pause each day and just come back and check in. But I feel pretty confident that if you go through and watch this video, whether you're using a scale or you're using cups, you're going to be able to create a starter fairly confidently and see that it is in fact fairly easy. So let's dive in and get into it. The standard way to make a starter is to take half a cup of flour and a quarter cup of water, mix them together on day 1. On day 2, discard back to half a cup of starter left in your jar, feed it half a cup of flour, quarter cup of water, and then just repeat that every day. So every day discard all the way back to half a cup of starter in your jar and half a cup of flour, quarter cup of water feeding. You do this for somewhere between 7 days and 3 weeks until your starter activates. You know your starter is active when it's doubling consistently after every feed, usually within 4 to 8 hours. Some might take up to 12. And at that point, your starter is good to go. Good to go means that you can put it in the fridge, you can use the discard that you're taking out to feed it all the time now in discard recipes, and you can use it to make sourdough bread. Up until the point where it's activated, you need to throw the discard away. It sucks, it's wasteful, I know, but it's not an activated starter. There's bacteria growing in there. You just have to throw it away. So we always recommend that you stay small. So I'm going to use the equivalence of half a cup of flour and a quarter cup of water. I would even suggest a quarter cup of flour and an 1/8 cup of water, but I don't have an 1/8 cup. But I would say just to keep it as small as you can, because you have to throw away until the starter activates. Once the starter activates, it's easy to make it huge, right? Okay, so let's get half a cup of flour. And what I'm going to do here is tare my scale to 0 with my jar on it. So this is half a cup of flour. I'm going to dump it in. And that's working out to 86 grams, which is a lot more than I would usually use. If you're using a scale, I would suggest somewhere between 25 and 60 grams. Okay, so now I'm going to add a quarter cup of liquid. In this case, beer, it's usually water. So let's bring this scale back to 0 again and see how much this beer weighs. So we'll dump that in. In this case, it's coming up to 56 grams. What we want is equal parts by weight, flour, and water. So in most cases, water weighs twice as much as flour. So, but what I'm going to do here is top this off to 86 grams with the beer. So there we go. I've got equal parts flour and water. I'm going to mix them up. I'm going to leave them sitting on the counter until tomorrow. And then tomorrow I'm going to discard, refeed, and continue on. And what I'm going to do is just keep taking clips of this until this guy activates so that you can see the whole process beginning to end. Talk to you soon. So day 2 of our beer starter. We haven't seen a ton of growth in the starter overnight, but there's definitely some bubbles in there. It's still pretty doughy. It smells like wet flour. It doesn't smell like a sourdough starter yet, and that's totally normal. It can take anywhere from 7 days to 2 weeks for this starter to wake up. On day 2, what you do with any starter, including this beer starter, is discard about half of what you put in and then refeed the same amount that you did yesterday. If you can use a scale, this is a little bit easier. It's a lot easier to stay really accurate, but I'm just gonna sort of show you what the grams work out to when using half a cup for flour and 1/4 cup for water. So the general rule is that water or liquid weighs about twice as much as flour. I found with the beer yesterday that it wasn't as heavy, and I don't know why that is, but what I'm going to do is half a cup of flour and an overflowing cup, 1/4 cups of beer in this. So when you're establishing a starter, you have to throw the discard away. It hasn't done anything good yet. It's not really usable for anything. So what I like to do is just scoop the discard into a bowl and then dump it into the garbage. I don't like pouring it down my drain. So I'm just gonna eyeball it and go with about half. So just take that out and we'll push the original starter from yesterday down. Now, the reason you have to discard when you're first starting with the starter is 2 reasons. One, either you would have to keep increasing your feedings in order to keep it from getting too hungry, and your starter would eventually be gallons. Or alternatively, you don't discard, but you keep feeding the same amount, and your starter is getting bigger, you're essentially starving it to death. After the starter is established, you can use the no discard method. So that's where you just keep a small amount, feed it right before you want to make your bread for to 12 hours or so, use that amount for your bread and then pop it back in the fridge. Or you can discard the starter and use the discard and discard recipes. Either one is fine. So I took about half out, and now I'm going to refeed the starter. So first I'm going to take half a cup of flour. And today, half a cup of flour is measuring as 84 grams. I think yesterday it might have been 86. And now I'm going to take a 1/4 cup of beer. So even though I'm using beer in this starter, essentially the process is exactly the same as with water. So let's just tear this back to 0 and see what a 1/4 cup ends up weighing. Only 50 grams. So I'm just going to top it up to the 84. I'm just going to keep my volumes equal. You want effectively the same amount of starter, water, and flour. It is much easier if you have a scale. You don't need one, but if you can get one, they're like $12 on Amazon. I'll link one. This one that I have, it was cheap, it came fast, it's worked perfectly forever. So I've got some nice foamy beer in there and some new flour. So all I'm going to do is remix this and let it sit for another 24 hours. Going forward, what I'm going to do is, instead of discarding half, I'm going to discard more like 2/3, so all the way back to the original base amount that the starter was. So we said that the flour and the beer weighed about 84 grams each. So I'm going to discard back to 84, 85 grams and then refeed 84, 85 grams, or half a cup and just over a 1/4 cup of beer every day for the next 7 to 14 days until this wakes up. And I'll know it's awake when it doubles consistently after every feed. So right now, just come closer so you can see, it's quite thick. People say pancake mixture, but I sure make my pancakes a lot thinner than this. What will happen is, at first it will be very thick like this, but once it actually starts the fermentation process, it will start eating through the flour and will go through a phase where it starts thick, and by the time you come back to feed it the next time, it's a lot more watery because it's eaten through the flour. So I'll check back on day 3. See you then. Hi everyone. Okay, so day 3 with the beer starter. So yesterday I discarded back to half a cup, fed it half a cup each, or half a cup of flour and a 1/4 cup of beer. It actually worked out to about 85 grams each. I'm finding with the beer, maybe it weighs less than water, I don't know, but I'm actually needing just a little bit more than a 1/4 of a cup. After the feeding yesterday, about 3 hours later, I noticed a little tiny bit of a rise. Nothing spectacular or dramatic, but this is normal. This is what we call a false rise. We usually see it around days 3, 4, and 5. And then what happens is the starter starts to feel like it's not doing anything. It's a little bit bubbly, but it's not rising, but the smell starts to change. It's normal around days 3 to 7 for your starter to smell awful. Baby diapers, you know. And then around days 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, you might start getting like a rubbing alcohol, acetone, alcohol smell. And these are all normal. This is just all part of the fermentation process. But these things are why we say don't save your discard until your starter is activated. An active starter smells lovely. It smells like very strong, almost a little bit alcoholic sourdough. So today what we're going to do is we're just going to discard all the way back to our 1/2 cup and refeed. So yesterday when I mixed this, it was like super thick. I was like trying to stir it. And now it's quite watery. Like, in fact, I think I can actually just pour this out instead of scoop it out. That's good. That means that the starter is eating through the flour and liquefying the starter in order to start this fermentation process. So we see a lot of posts about, oh, my starter's really watery or it's super thick. It's supposed to change over time. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to discard myself back to about 1/3 of the starter that was in there, and then I'll just check my weight. But what we're always doing is operating on 3 parts of a ratio: the amount of starter, the amount of water, and the amount of flour. And the ideal situation is that all 3 are equal. So the first day you only feed flour and water. So the second day, technically you discard half, but from days 3 and onward, you're going to keep discarding 2/3. Like I said, this is much easier with a scale. It's really a lot easier with a scale, but I'm trying to make it so that anyone can do this. So first of all, I'm just going to pour off about 2/3 of this starter. I wonder how it smells today. Let's give it a sniff. It still just smells like slightly wet flour. So I'm not, and it's interesting too, because I'm feeding it with beer. You would think that beer smell would be there. But I noticed even with the beer bread that I was making yesterday, the flour sucks it up and it goes away. So I'm down to about 1/3 of what I had. And I'm just gonna check my scale here. So including the weight of my jar, this now weighs about 160 grams. So my jar weighs about 80 grams. And so that's leaving me with 164 grams I have here. So that's leaving me with 84 grams of starter. And yesterday and the day before, we figured out that 1/2 cup of flour weighs about 84 grams. And an overflowing 1/4 cup of beer weighs the same. So I'm going to feed with the cups, but I'm just going to use my scale to keep track of what I'm doing. So let's take this 1/2 cup of flour and we'll dump it in. That's coming in at 86. I think 86 is what we've been seeing pretty consistently. And then I'm going to take my beer, pour it into this 1/4 cup. And that's only coming in at 55. So I'm just going to top it up to 86 grams. So there we go. We're back. So just like yesterday now, so this discard I'm going to throw away. I guess you could rinse it down your drain, but I don't. I'm worried about clogging up my drain, so I'm just going to dump that in the garbage and then clean it. So as I'm stirring this, right, you can see now we're back to very thick. You want to give it a really good stir. And once you've got it really well mixed, you want to try and scrape down the sides of your jar. And I'll show you the consistency of it once I'm done so that you understand, right? A starter, if it's doing what it's supposed to be doing, never stays the same consistency. Trying to go by consistency is a good guide, but really accurate measuring is the best way, and trying to be the same every day. So if you start this starter and you use 1/2 cup and just over 1/4 cup, then just keep doing that the same every day. So check this out. So now it's like, hang on a sec. It's like so thick. Like people say pancake consistency, but I would not I would have much more watery pancake batter, but it is similar, I guess. And by tomorrow when we feed it, I have a feeling that it'll be watery enough to pour off like we did with this. So if you look at the difference, let's take this knife out. If you look at the difference between the two, they're the same starter, right? So watery, smooth, chunky, and thick. So now I'm just gonna scrape down the sides again, pop my lid back on, and leave this for another 24 hours, and then come back and show you day 4. And we'll just keep going until the day that we get an active starter. Okay, talk to you soon. Bye. Okay, so today's day 4 with our beer starter, but it's actually day 5. I got sick yesterday. I still look sick today. But I'm going to feed this. But that's an interesting concept. So you're in the middle of making your starter and then you have to go away or you have to go out of town or you get sick and you didn't feed it. It's fine. Just continue on. So here it is. And if you look, it's got some coloration in it, a little bit of water separation, and it's quite liquidy. So we're just going to do the same thing that we've done for the last couple of days. So if you look, bubbles, liquidy. And for the first time, it doesn't just smell like wet flour. It actually smells a little bit like sourdough. It's got like a sweet smell to it. So the last couple of days, all we've done is discard off 2/3. If I was going by weight, I would be discarding back to the 86 grams that the flour's been working out to. You can pick any base amount. Just always get back to your base amount and feed equal amounts of flour and water. That's a 1-to-1-to-1 ratio. But in this case, we're just, we're going fast and loose and showing that, you know, it doesn't always have to be super precise. So what I've done is I've poured off because it's super liquidy. Now, why is it liquidy? Well, it's fermenting. And so it has eaten through most of the flour that was in there. This is why we have to feed it every day. So it's gone and eaten through it and liquefied the concoction that we had in there. So you can see this. There's bubbles in it. So this is pretty good. This is going to be our 4th feeding. So same as last time, I'm going to use the cup and the scale just to see how it actually works out. So let's just fill this half cup up. Try not to make a mess. All right, so a messy half cup, we'll dump it in. Today it's a little less, it's coming up at 65 grams, so that's fine. Now I'm just going to tare my scale and I'm going to pour the beer in. That's at 60, just add a little bit more. So, you know, when you're measuring with cups and like with cups like this, it's not always perfectly accurate. You're probably okay as long as you do the same thing every day. Also, this is the first can of beer that I started with a few days ago. I've just been putting saran wrap on it and keeping it in the fridge. I don't think you need a fresh can every day. So just like all the other days, I'm going to mix this up. I'm going to set it over in a warm spot beside my stove and see what happens over the next couple of days. Now, I know this is a beer starter, but all of these processes are the same for any starter, regardless of what liquid you're using. So we'll check back in tomorrow and hopefully I'll be feeling a little better and hopefully we'll start to see some action in this starter. Talk to you soon. Hi everyone. Okay, so day 5 of our beer starter where we will just keep going until it comes alive. So it's pretty bubbly. Oh, we spilled some, but that's okay. So it's very liquidy. I'm just gonna get some paper towel. Liquidy is normal during this stage. What happens is the starter eats through the flour that is in there and turns it eventually, if you leave it long enough, into alcohol. So that's what fermentation is. That's what we're trying to achieve. And that's what we're going to keep going for until this doubles and doubles by itself consistently after every feed. So we're on day 5 now. This could come alive in a couple of days. It might take a little longer. So just like I've been doing the last few times, I'm going to pour 2/3 off, which I'm going to throw away. Very liquid. Very bubbly. Wish I could tip this more so that it's definitely alive. It's definitely doing something. So that's exciting. So we're just going to use the scale and the measuring cups like we've been doing. I always say, if you can get a scale, absolutely do. It makes things way easier, but it's not essential. You can do it with cups. So we're going to make about a 1/2 cup of flour. Got about a 1/2 cup of flour here. Today that came in at 65 grams. Yesterday, I think it was 86. A couple of days it was 83. This is why we say get a scale. You know, it's just a little bit less accurate using cups and measures, although you can, of course, try and be really super duper careful and be super easy. But I'm at 65 grams now, so I'm just going to aim for 65 grams of beer, which I think should be about a 1/4 cup. 58. So just top off. I can't say that I'd be lying if I said that I don't prefer a scale. And I'd even be lying if I said that I don't wish that I could tell everybody in the group that they should absolutely have a scale. One of the arguments we often get is, well, the pioneers did it without a scale. Well, yeah, sure, but they also had potentially hundreds of friends and families members around them who were passing on the oral tradition. You know, they had been doing it their whole life. Eventually, when you get comfortable with sourdough, you can do it without a scale too, and you can do it without a scale ever. But if you're trying to go through this process, it's easier with a scale. So that's day 5. That's it. So here it is. I'm gonna just put an elastic on it so that you guys can see, because there is a chance that this baby doubles when I'm not making a video, and I can just snap a picture of it and then add it in. Let's see if this fits. So the purpose of the elastic is it marks the height that your starter was at, and if you come in and it's doubled or more, then you know that you're starting to really be on your way. So I'm still just going to keep throwing my discard away for now, even though it's starting to get bubbly and smell a lot like sourdough. I just want to make sure that I'm not using that discard until the starter itself is established. So I'll check back with you tomorrow on day 6. Talk to you soon. Hi everyone. Okay, so we're on day 6 of our beer starter. And this starter did some interesting stuff overnight. I took a bunch of pictures and I'm going to insert them here. So it really bubbled up last night. You can see the residue on the lid, and I haven't opened the lid yet, but the lid's like arched because there's lots of air trapped in there. So a rise on day 6 could be still in the false rise stage, or it could mean that this thing is waking up. So what I'm going to do is just keep discarding and feeding for a couple more days. And if it rises and falls every day, then we're good to go. So today I'm trying something a little different. I've pre-measured 1/2 cup of flour in this kind of cup. So just like I've been doing every day, I'm going to use 1/2 cup and a 1/4 cup, but also use the scale. And I'm finding it very interesting during this journey of creating this starter and filming it every day that the cups measures are kind of showing some real inconsistencies. So, you know, scales cost about $10 to $15 on Amazon. Not everybody can get them. Not even everybody wants them. But I will just disclaimer say that if you can get a scale, consider doing so. It makes things just so much more consistent and easier when it comes to sourdough. A lot of sourdough recipes that are excellent recipes only come in grams, and so it sort of just opens more doors for you. But also on the flip side of the coin, we've tried to take all of our beginner-based recipes and offer them both in cups and in grams. So here's our starter that we fed yesterday, and I'm just going to bring it close. It's very watery. So what's happening with this starter is it's really eating through its flour. It's really active and happy. I'll show you it after I mix it today, how thick it is when it starts, and then just in 24 hours it eats through. So interesting process. So just like I've been doing over the last few days, I'm going to pour off about 2/3. And I mean, the thing is, starters don't have to be accurate. You know, they're pretty resilient. They do what they're going to do. You know, I don't know if the pioneers had measuring cups or not. But if you want to have a perfect scenario and be super consistent, there's definitely a good argument there for, you know, I'm trying to troubleshoot what's going on with my starter, but I don't necessarily know whether I've been consistent and how much I've done one day to the next, compared to, well, now I want to troubleshoot my starter. And the one thing I know for sure is that I've been exact every day in what I've been doing. And then you can make tinier adjustments, I think. So yesterday I started with the elastic, which I probably could have started with right on day one. And what we've been doing is pouring off 2/3 every day. So I would say that that's about 2/3 that we've poured off. And what we're going to do is just refeed like we've been doing every day, half a cup of starter or half a cup of flour and a 1/4 cup of beer. But this time we're going to use this kind of measure, so half a cup. So let's see what this comes up with by weight. 74. So on the first couple days, half a cup weighed 86. Yesterday was like super small. So we are finding that using cups is getting a different weight every day. So now let's just try and pour a 1/4 cup of beer in here. So that's a 1/4 cup, and we'll zero our scale back. And that's saying 65. The beer's staying kind of consistent. What I've been doing since day one is using the cups and measures, and then I've actually just been matching the beer by weight to the flour. So I'm just going to put this up to 74. There we go. So now I'm going to stir it up. If you just left a starter sitting on a counter forever, it would just turn into alcohol. So it would become like literally pure liquid alcohol. The thing about a starter with sourdough is that we're just stopping it before that. So as you can see, much thicker, still kind of watery, but much thicker than it is the next day when we pour off. You could choose to thicken it at this point. You know, you could choose to use less beer or whatever. And then I guess the only thing I was thinking about since yesterday is that even though this is a beer starter, it's the exact same process for any starter. So once I'm done filming all these days and compile all this stuff together into one video, I think it's going to be how to make a starter using any liquid you want. So anyways, there we go. That's day 6. We'll see if this doubles and triples again today like it did yesterday. Just like yesterday, I'll take photos if it does. And maybe in the next couple of days, we'll have an active starter and be ready to bake. Thanks, guys. Talk to you soon. Okay, so day 7. This thing, if you look at it right now, you can see it's quite bubbly and it's come down. But last night I took pictures again. It did the same thing. It doubled. It's super bubbly. I was doing a live this morning and I was showing how when you use a lid on a starter, people are always worried about their starter exploding. If your jar is big enough, you don't have to worry about that. This had actually like puffed up, and as soon as I touched the lid, it started to go like, so there's lots of air trapped in there. There's lots of things happening. So I'm going to say that this starter is probably ready to use in bread. It doubled yesterday. It doubled the day before. I'm going to feed it today and see if it doubles. And if it does, then it's doubling consistently after every feed. It's at least a week old. And so that's a good indicator that it's ready to go. I'm still going to keep this starter on the counter and keep feeding it every day for probably 2 to 3 weeks just to build it up and get it nice and strong and consistent. And then after that, I might start putting it in the fridge. So that's a common question that we see all the time is, can I put my starter in the fridge? When should I use it? I think it's probably a good idea to build strength in your starter when it's new. So I'm just going to see if any air comes out. I'll try and put this close to my earbuds. I use these like Bose earbuds and they tune everything out. But let's see if you can hear it when it opens. I think I let most of it out earlier. So I'll show you. Just put this down. Super bubbly. Also super watery. So this starter is really fermenting. It's really active. I don't know if that has to do with the beer. I've been saying over the last few days that I've been developing this starter from the beginning with flour and beer, but it's essentially the same process as any other starter. I don't know if the beer is making it activate so quickly or if it's just my experience. A lot of times when people are making a starter from scratch, it's their first time and they make some mistakes. They use too much water or you know, whatever happens. But this one I think is really active. And we can tell by those bubbles. So just like the last few days, I'm gonna pour 2/3 off. This one's starting to get a little big on me, a little bit bigger than I would usually like. And it's also very, very liquidy and watery. So I'm actually gonna pour lots off today. So there's what I've poured off, and I'm still, oh, Theo. My cat is very, very curious about what's happening. Get down, please. Go away. There you go. Well, that was fun. Theo's like, what's happening here? I need to smell this. It smells amazing. It smells boozy. It smells very alcohol, but it smells like sourdough. It smells like something I would use. So it's hard to see. Let's see if I can stir it. But I've definitely poured off 2/3 or more. I'm gonna discard this back quite a bit so that it stops growing so big. Let's do some more. That was funny. I make these videos all the time. I'm constantly making tutorials and Theo never jumps up like that, but he can smell this. So I'm down just to a tiny bit in the bottom of my starter. I've discarded at least 2/3 from where my elastic was, if not more. And I'm just going to refeed it today on day 7, the same way I've been refeeding it. So just turn this a little. Okay. So what I've been doing every day is using cups, but verifying with my scale. What I found every day is that the flour measure just varies wildly. So I've got some flour in here. I'm gonna fill my half cup. Now, if you were a very particular person, and I think maybe if you're using cups, you might need to be, then you would measure this cup of flour. So when I do recipes for baking with cups, this is the technique that I use, where I sort of push the flour down into the cup and level it perfectly. So let's see how much this weighs. I've got my scale tiered to 0. 74. It's crazy. Day 1 it was 86. Like, it's just been all over the place. I don't know if it's really possible to be exactly accurate if you're using cups, but that's okay. We know that starters still work when you use cups and measures. I just am learning from this process that I like the idea of a scale because I like the idea of consistency. So I'm going to zero this back. I'm going to use my 1/4 cup. I might actually have to open a new can today, because that's just a little, oh, it looks perfect. So I've got a 1/4 cup of beer here. 58. It changes every day with the cups. It just is what it is. This has been a great experiment. In the Sourdough for Beginners groups, everybody can make sourdough. We want everybody to do it. And so if they don't have a scale, or they don't want to use a scale, or they don't want to use grams, they'd rather use cups or ounces or whatever it may be, we're trying to accommodate everyone. But what I am finding is that the most accurate way to do sourdough is 100% with a scale. So I got 58 grams with the beer. I've had different measurements on other days. I'm just going to top this up so that it matches the flour. So I'm going to go to 74 grams. So here we go. Now I'm just going to mix this just like I did the last couple of days. And what I'm thinking is that since this starter has doubled for the last 2 days, and we're well past days 3 and 4 where the false rise usually happens, if it doubles again today, the same way it did yesterday, then it's ready to use and bake. So tomorrow, when I make this video, we might actually be talking about starting to bake with this. So I'll show you now. You saw it at the beginning and it was quite watery, and now it's thick. People say pancake batter. I personally make my pancake batter way thinner than that. I like to pour my pancake batter and have it get super bubbly. But as you can see, the starter when it's first fed is quite thick. And then as it eats through its flour, it turns into alcohol. So it's fine to have your starter be thick sometimes and thin other times. That's all a normal part of the process. So I am going to throw this discard away for one more day. It was very alcohol, very strong. I think it would work in bread, but I'm going to see how this feed goes. So I'm just going to set my elastic at the height it was. And just like yesterday, I'll insert some photos of what it did yesterday here. Whatever this does today, I'll take photos and deal with those tomorrow. So there we go, day 7, we're almost there. Talk to you soon, bye. Hi everyone. Okay, so we're on day 8. And I think the starter's ready to go. It rose yesterday, it's starting to fall now. But when it rose yesterday, it did like a nice consistent rise that we see in activated starters. So on the night of day 5, it rose all the way to the top and hit the roof of the jar. And then on day 6, it rose, but it was very liquidy and still smelled very alcohol. And then yesterday on day 7, we fed this and I had said that I think it's ready to go, but I just want to make sure. So this is going to be the last day that I record this video. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to go through it again today, feed it, show you, and then I'll probably actually feed it a couple more days before I bake with it. And then when I bake with it, I'm going to use the beginner bread recipe made with beer. So I will post a link to both the original beginner bread recipe that's with regular water and flour, as well as the beer bread recipe where I replace all of the water in the beginner bread recipe with beer. So when you're done watching this video, then you can go to the next step in the tutorials. Definitely take some time to learn about the essential processes of making sourdough. As a beginner, we recommend that you just keep things super duper simple. While your starter is establishing, it's a great time to learn about sourdough, but try to keep your first recipe simple. So I'll also post a link to our essential processes ebook, which can help you get that sorted out really well. So I did take some pictures of this starter yesterday when it was risen. I'll post those here. And now we're back. And now I'm just going to show you how it looks and talk about how it smells and get it fed. So technically, because I think this starter is ready, I could probably start using my discard in discard recipes. This starter is exactly the same as a water starter, and with a water starter, I would probably start saving my discard and using it in discard cookies and everything else. But I'm just going to toss it one more day. The thing about a starter is once it rises consistently after every feed, and that means every time you feed it, it sort of does the same thing, then it's ready to use in recipes and bread. You can save your discard, you can make sourdough bread, you're good to go. But even once it's done that 3 or 4 or 5 days, you can still keep strengthening the starter for quite some time. So when I create a new starter, I usually keep it out on the counter and feed it every day for a good 2.5 weeks before I start storing it in the fridge. That's optional, but it's something you can do. With this beer starter, I'm probably not going to maintain it forever because, you know, beer is expensive, but I will keep it stored in my fridge and maybe use it once a month. So I just opened it and I'll show you. It's got these cool bubbles. So it's definitely fermented and it smells, it's very alcohol, but it smells like a fermented starter. So fermented starters can absolutely smell alcohol. That usually means that they're hungry, and that you should slightly increase your flour and keep your water the same, or keep your flour the same and slightly reduce your water. So over the last 7 days, what I've noticed is that whenever I measure the flour using the cup measurement, it comes out different every day. It ranges somewhere between 76 and 86 grams. And then when I measure the beer into the quarter cup, it's coming up fairly consistently somewhere between 55 and 60 grams. So every day I've actually been topping the beer up to match the weight of the flour. Normally when you were making a starter, you would either use the scale or the cups. But today, since this smells alcohol and since I'm still going to keep working on building its strength, even though it's ready and I think we can end this tutorial now, I'm actually not going to top the beer up to match the flour. I'm going to put the half a cup of flour in, we'll see what it weighs, and then I'm just going to put the quarter cup of beer in, mix it up, and it should double overnight. And technically, well, it should double within 4 or 5 hours, and technically I could bake with it this afternoon. So first of all, we're going to discard about 2/3. So just the same thing I've been doing today. It's liquid enough. It's not as liquidy as it has been, but it's liquid enough that I can still pour it. So, but as you can see, it's thicker than it's been. So I'm just gonna get rid of a good amount of this starter. If it's super alcohol and hungry, then it's super hungry. So let's just have less starter in the jar that needs to eat and put lots of flour in. So you can see where our elastic was and where we're at now. That's about half. So I'll still even just take a little bit more. Okay. So here we go. Scrape the sides. So now we're down to just a little bit of starter left in the jar. And I'm going to put half a cup of flour in, and I'll tell you what that weighs. So we've got our scale tiered to 0. Today I'll just do a willy-nilly flour measure with the half a cup, and we'll dump that in. 84 grams. So if I just scoop half a cup of flour out of the flour container, it's coming up around 84 to 86 grams. If I level it, it came up around 75. If you're going to make your starter by weight, I recommend that until it's established, you use a small amount. And then after it's established, you can grow it as big as you want. We always say 50 grams. So 25 grams work, 60 grams work. But if you just want to keep it easy, keep 50 grams of starter in your jar, feed it 50 grams of flour, 50 grams of water consistently every day. Remember that day 1, you're putting 50 grams of flour and 50 grams of water in, which is 100 grams. On day 2, discard half, add in 50 and 50. And then every day thereafter, you're discarding back to 50 grams. So theoretically taking 100 grams out. But with the cups, it ends up being a little bit more flour. Another option that you could do is instead of half a cup and a quarter of a cup, you could do a quarter of a cup and an eighth of a cup. And that would save you a lot of waste since we have to throw our discard away. So I'm just going to grab the beater. Let's see what the beer was today. So we're at 0. Oops. Let's use our quarter cup. $61 today. The beer's been more consistent than the flour, but still not perfect every day. So the last few days I had been topping the beer up to match the flour to the 84 grams, but the starter's been quite watery. So today I'm going to not top up the beer to match the flour and make a super thick mix with my starter. And remember what I've said every day is that your consistency doesn't really matter too much during the first several days. All you're trying to do is convince this flour to start fermenting. And then once the starter is fermenting, then you can start to adjust your everything. You can adjust your flour, you can adjust your amount, you can adjust how much you're feeding it, you can adjust your thickness, right? But I'll show you now. So without topping up the beer, as I'm mixing it, it's extremely thick. And I think this nice thick mix, this heavy flour mix, is going to make this starter pretty happy. I think it's going to sort of settle down with the alcohol smell. So maybe I will come back one more day tomorrow and just check in and show you what the adjustment of the flour was. But I think this was a really good experiment. And if you followed all the way along to the end, then good for you. And I think you're ready to go. And make sure you check out the beginner bread recipe and keep on learning and everything else. But for today, we'll leave it at this. We'll say this starter is ready to go and technically could be baked with. but that I'm going to keep building strength in it for a few more days. And we'll talk to you soon. Bye now.